One. Hello, you guys, and
welcome to the Women's Cave. I think we're sharing it today because you know what? I let her have some of my champagne.
Yes, she did.
Because it was important, and it was a slushy, so she could have some.
Yeah, she made frozen mimosas this morning to go with breakfast.
No, it wasn't morning, technically, when it was done. It was afternoon, technically.
11:45. It's afternoon.
No. It was 11:50, and then it takes 12 minutes to mix.
That's
so
right.
It was 12:02. So afternoon. So officially don't have a problem. I'm Jade.
And I'm Winona. And yes, we don't have problems.
Yes.
By the way, I did want to quickly say to you, did you notice that I have my pillow just sitting here chilling?
Okay, so yeah, why not? You know what, y'all? I mean, quarantine has just made people just do other things.
Should I sound like truth?
No. Why are we talking about truth? Nobody really wants to hear about our boring life.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody. They want to hear about our books and then good to I want to forget. No one cares.
We wrote books, literary life guides
with pop poetry.
Did I say that right?
Yes. And I think you had too many frozen mimosas.
Moving on.
Yes, let's move on.
Gracefully.
Gracefully, absolutely. This is us moving on. And the anti-thought series is 13 of them, so we're only going to highlight like 2. And I thought divorce was bad, and I thought being grown up is easy, available on audible.com, barnesandnoble.com, and amazon.com, and then all the rest of them are available. And then the Misfit Guys, whatever.
The Misfit Guys, which is another series.
Yes, it's a series.
And by the way, if you're wondering how much we like cocktails, we actually have our own cocktail recipe book.
That's
a literary life guide full of pop poetry.
Yes, in the Misfit Guys.
And then
we have one of our The Punches, which is only a all poetry, one of our only all poetry books. If Only I Were Me, available on barnesandnoble.com. And then we are please don't touch it today. And we are the co-founders of the 25 Hottest Indie Authors, Artists, and Advocate magazine. It's 196 pages, so feel free to check that out. You can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com.
But you're not here to hear about it.
Absolutely not. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone. My name is Sharon Pelletier, coming at you from New York City. I'm originally from the Detroit suburbs in Michigan. I've been in New York for about 10 years. I'm a literary agent at Distill, Goddard, Barrett, which is a mid-sized agency of about 15 agents and staff, about 25 years old. I represent almost entirely adult, a mix of fiction and nonfiction. I do a lot of book club and women's fiction, a lot of suspense, a little bit of romance, and then on the nonfiction side, I do occasional memoir, a little bit of practical nonfiction, and whatever else catches my interest.
Nice. I love the fact when they say that they have a job and they're like, oh, whatever catches my interest. I mean, where else? Why are we on the wrong
view? We were on the wrong view the whole time. That's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, you had to look. Am I nappy hair? Okay, never mind.
What? You're not supposed to say.
Oh my goodness, I'm not supposed to ever say that. My bad. Moving on. Let's talk about you, Sharon. How did you get started?
That's a good question. A little bit by accident, a little bit by hard work, a little bit by luck. I always wanted to work in publishing. Even before I knew that you could work in publishing, besides being an author, I wanted to be an author. And then I realized I'm much better at and enjoy more the support roles like editorial, planning with authors for their careers. For a long time, I did want to be an editor. And when I had interviews or mentorships, experts would always tell me, well, you'd be a really good agent. You might like being an agent. That might be a good fit for the type of work you want to do with authors. And I always thought I would never do that. I'm not going to read contracts. I'm not going to yell at people about money. I had a very sort of Jerry Maguire view of, what agents do. And it's just going to be lots of being a jerk to people and screaming. But then I ended up, so I worked for a couple of small presses. I worked for Barnes & Noble and the stores for a long time. And then I was freelancing. I did not like freelancing. I like a little more structure, a little more stability, a little more support. And a friend knew that my agency was hiring. And I was like, well, I've always heard this would be a good job. Let me just go meet them and hear about it. And it did turn out to be a good fit. And then as soon as I started building my list, I loved it. And I was like, oh, everyone was right all along. This is a good fit for me. And the contracts aren't even that bad. So it's, it's partly that I tried to learn from each position I did have on the way to where I am now. And it's partly that I was very blessed to meet the right people at the right time when someone was hiring or when someone wanted to, invite me to a mixer. And then just, trying to be nice and friendly to everyone and treat others as I would want to be treated at work as well as in my personal life, which I think is something that gets forgotten a lot. And, when people are pursuing their ambitions, they kind of forget you still have to be human and friendly and supportive to each other because you're also still people, not just coworkers or competitors.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love that you said you wanted to help authors plan out their careers, which is very interesting. Let's talk about what does that entail?
Well, it depends a little bit on what your stage of your career is, and it depends a little bit on what your goals are. Sometimes it means, okay, you have a new manuscript ready to sell it to publishers. Let's talk about where you see this book in the market. Is this a more literary book or a more commercial book? Is this going to be something that is more, thought and prose driven? It's all about the beautiful words and less about how exciting is the story? Or is it more a page turner and people are going to read it on the beach, not so much, to think deep thoughts and admire your beautiful sentences? If you have a book coming out, it's let's talk about, is the publisher doing everything they need to support you? Are you doing everything you can with your own particular network and sets of skills to support what the publisher is doing? Sometimes it means this book didn't sell. What's our next step? Am I going to self-publish it? Am I going to just go on to the next book? Sometimes the book is published and doesn't do as great as we were hoping. And so then it's about what was the problem? Did the publisher not perform the way we'd hoped? Is this category not really working for you? It's sort of like, sometimes I think of it as choose your own adventure. So we just look at what's the decision right now and what are the options and what fits with your goals. And then when we make a choice, that opens up the next set of options compared to goals. So it's a lot of creativity and a lot of, for me at least, how I like to look at it is a lot of figuring out not just what's the best idea or this is clearly going to make you the most money, but what feels right to you, what is true for you. It's great if that makes money, but publishing is a very fickle business, as I'm sure you guys know. And so if you only chase what seems like, the surefire home run and it doesn't work out, then you've really wasted your time and energy, as opposed to if you did the authentic thing, the thing you were passionate about, the thing you enjoy, then at least you haven't wasted your time and experience, even if it doesn't turn out as financially successful as you'd hoped.
I like that. I know we keep saying I like, so maybe I should change that to I love or I adore. No, I'm joking. Yeah. Look at me as a thesaurus now. Anyway, no. I adore the fact that you said that something that you were passionate about, because I think about as an author how many times you write things that you just hate, but you know they sell, so you write them, and you just wish you hadn't. I mean, the check is nice, but you're like, if only I had used my time doing something else. So I do have a 3-part question.
Which she's famous for.
Yes, and of course, all 3 parts have nothing to do with each other.
Of course.
Number 1 is a joke. Are you looking to take on any pop poets?
Joke.
Number 2, as poetry doesn't sell. Number 2 is where are your original authors' ambitions? Are you still like, typing on something, or did you just kind of push it to the side? And then number 3 is the question everybody's going to want to know as they watch this show is what do you take and what do you look for in a query letter to take on a new author? And I apologize for the question.
Well, so I'll answer the first question with my statement at the beginning. You never know what might take my fancy. You're right that there's not a huge market for poetry, but if I read it and love it, sometimes I end up signing things that I never thought I was chasing. So the second question about my own writer ambitions, they do not exist, or at least are very dormant. It was actually a big relief to me when I realized, wait, I don't have to be a writer. I was always sort of feeling a little bit, not exactly guilty, but, I'd be working away on my edits or, whatever I was doing at the time. I was like, oh, I haven't written, I haven't worked on my short story, I don't have a novel idea. And then one day I just realized, like, I don't have to be a writer. I can just say, no, I don't write. And it was kind of like a weight had fallen off me. And I think that for people who write, it's sort of it's not just for the paycheck. It's not just to be famous. It's not just to be on Oprah or have Reese Witherspoon be in your movie. It's because you have to write. You have a story you have to tell, and it's pulling out from inside you. That means you keep coming back day after day, no matter how many rejections you're getting from publishers or agents or magazines, whatever the case may be. And I don't have that. So I'm not going to try to be a writer until or unless the day comes that I think of something I need to write and I have that kind of inner thing compelling me to write it. For now, I just write a lot of emails and a lot of edit memos. And then, sorry, what was the third question? Remind me.
The normal thing, what do you look for in query letters?
Oh, right.
What do you look for taking on?
Yeah. So in a query letter, I mean, it's sort of a combination of, obviously, do I like this story idea or this topic? If it's nonfiction, does it seem interesting? Does it seem like something that's not already out there? And then I'm also looking for the pieces of the query around the story pitch. So, the length of it, or your word count, or the way you describe your category. Does that suggest to me that you're someone who reads a lot and pays attention to your market and has maybe done some homework on publishing, or is in a writer's group and is learning there, or is attending conferences and learning, to kind of start to clue me off, okay, this person has a great idea and it seems like they can write from the query, but also they're taking the business side of this as seriously as the art side of it. Which is not to say that a project can't be great if your word count is a little too long, or if you describe your category weirdly, or the only comp titles you use are, Harry Potter. But it's a nice little, perk up green light if it's a cool idea and I can see, oh, this person really, they kind of like, these are good comps in the past couple years, or okay, they said their genre this way and the word count is just right. It just kind of like puts me in the direction towards yes, instead of like, oh, this person seems like maybe they're not ready, or they finished this book yesterday and they sent it to me today expecting me to give them $1 million tomorrow. They, they're in it to just take the money and run, or they're in it for the idea of being a rich, famous author, not because they really care and are pursuing everything around writing in addition to just, sitting there typing.
Jay, do you have a question? Because if you don't, I do.
I know you have a question, but my question is, as an author and as many authors watch this show and listen to the podcast, what are the two things that you would tell people to keep them going? Because yes, we hear a lot of no. And so what would you tell them as an agent, even as a person that just knows a bunch of authors? What are those things that they tell you that kept them going through the years?
I think one thing that can be really helpful is to identify clearly for yourself and keep in mind why you're doing this. Are you writing your memoir because you want your story preserved for your kids and your nieces and nephews and your grandkids? Are you writing about, this story of a woman finding herself when she goes on a road trip because you want to portray an experience you had and use fiction as a frame to explore that? Are you writing because it makes you feel so good when you have an image in your head and you get the scene out on paper just right? And then when you sort of identified for yourself why you write or what about this project is so important to you, figure out some small interim goals that you can reward yourself for, or that you can celebrate and feel that you accomplished something. So not just like, great, I want to write this book and I'm going to feel really good about it when it's on the New York Times bestseller list. Pick out for yourself, I'm going to be proud of myself when I hit 50,000 words, and here's what my reward is going to be. Or I'm going to be proud of myself when I type the end, or when I trade with a critique partner and they send me back the edits and there's something complimentary they say about the character that I love most. Those little things that you can hit, goals that you can hit regardless of how long it takes you to get an agent, how long it takes your agent to sell the book, because then, and those goals should be sort of tied to what's important to you about writing. It might not be important to you to work closely with a critique partner, editor, the way it would to someone else. It might be way more important to you to write a 90,000 word book, and someone else is more motivated by the idea of other people responding to their character. So figure out what about your story or the experience of writing keeps you going, and then tie your goals to that. I think that's one thing that can kind of get you through the hard times. And then the other thing, which is, I'm probably not the first person to say this, but it really does help to get a network for yourself, which you guys already have established here. But it helps not just with learning and comparing experiences, but just having someone else who's doing the same very weird thing with you. You might not have friends or family members in your day-to-day life who understand what it means to get a full manuscript request and how that's exciting, or who understand how disappointing it is when an agent you were really excited to work with sends you a no, because that is weird and strange if you're not, you know, in the context of the business and the goals. But if you have writing friends, even if they're on the internet, even if they're on the other side of the world, they understand those successes and failures, and they can cheer for you and encourage you as needed, in addition to being a great resource for critiques or advice or tips. So I think those are the two things, sort of one internal, one external, that really help whatever stage of your career you're in. And I think it also helps, you know, if the book comes out and you are getting negative reviews, it still helps to keep focused on your little goals, whatever you've updated those to be. If you're a 7-time New York Times bestseller, you can still have discouraging moments and exciting moments calibrated to yourself, and a support network calibrated to yourself, regardless of what, you know, things that other people think you're hitting in their idea of what a successful writer is, you know?
Oh, no.
We absolutely.
That whole poetry book is about that.
Yeah. If only I mean, it's about that. You know, people saying like, hey, you're so successful. And we're like, only we were the people you thought we were. And then, like, by the end, though, we totally recognize, wait, maybe we are those people.
No, I still don't agree.
Whatever, Winona. Whatever.
It's one of those days. Tomorrow I'll be like, I'm amazing. Anyway. Do we have time for one more question?
No, we have time for the last question. That's what we have time for. So, where can people...
Well, Sharon, do you have time for one more question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you don't have to answer it. So I remember you said before there's a difference between someone who writes prose that are very, very beautiful, and then there's a difference between someone who is like trying to go like mainstream. So as authors, we always have this little conversation with other authors about, is there a difference between the literary world world that's just about structure and beauty, and then the people who write to, like, you know, mystery, and they are more interested in selling to the genre side? Is there a difference to literary agents?
There is. There are definitely some agents that focus very literary. If you look at their list of clients, it's people who write very, intellectual, esoteric books, very literary novels. They have a lot of, people who get the big prizes and who are nominated for the big prizes. And so there are definitely agents that focus on that. There are also agents that are probably a lot more commercial, and well, I shouldn't generalize, but my impression is that those agents are less excited about the editorial work, and their charge as an agent and what they get satisfaction out of is kind of the deal making and like the rush of that. Maybe more of the Jerry Maguire approach. I think there are a ton of agents that are sort of in the middle, like myself, where your favorite, most ideal book that you represent is something that has attention to craft. There are maybe some sentences that you think are really lovely. Overall, the person is a good writer, has a good voice. There's attention to character development. Maybe the book is about an important issue or kind of exploring a thought, but at the same time, it's also has a story driving it, and you want to find out what happens, and you can kind of recommend it to a wide swath of people, someone who reads 6 books a year, someone who reads 60 books a year. That's what I respond to most as a reader, and that's what I like working on the best. And I think there are a bunch of agents that see that sort of middle of the spectrum point as their sweet spot, and have books that are also a little more literary and also more commercial, again, like me. So there are definitely agents that focus on one or the other, but I think there's also a lot of us that you could see on their list something super literary, something super commercial, and things that kind of have elements of both.
Thank you. It's been so nice to get a different perspective or different viewpoint
Absolutely.
on that question. Because, I mean, how many times have we discussed it as authors?
We have discussed it as authors. I think people ask it.
I mean, mostly because we, you know, you get poetry. Everyone goes, oh, literary poetry.
They're like,
no, it's prose poetry. They're like, what?
What is that?
It's like genre-based poetry.
It's like
That happens.
It's like music, but for poetry. Anyway.
Oh, and I should just add, I didn't mean to come across earlier saying that very commercial and plot-driven books do not have an editorial aspect, but in terms of, you know, the agents and what they're excited about, the kind of editorial you do for those is a little bit different, and sometimes those sell more on kind of the concept and the story, as opposed to more literary books that sell on the beautiful sentences and like someone might never leave the living room in the whole book, or, you know, they spend the whole book sitting on a dune thinking about their life. So yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't accidentally, you know, bash commercial books as not being talented or having editorial requirements. But I think on our side of it, they work a little different.
There are a lot of books that are commercial, but as we like to say, even with our own poetry, even though we have pop poetry, we said, like, one of the first books I have ever read that was not for school is a Mickey Spillane book. Like, that's totally noir, totally like, and I loved it. And that's where the start of my like long life of reading books have begun. I mean, I haven't lived that long, but I'm saying read a lot of books in my time. And so that's where it began. It began on a noir like Mike Hammer book, really. But now everything is open.
And I think it's a writing skill in itself to write a story that the writing isn't noticeable, that it's all in the characters and the energy, and you know, you're in the scene, you're not distracted by what a beautiful sentence. And I'm sure you've all read books where it feels like the person is trying to be a beautiful writer and you can kind of feel or see the writer they're writing, which at least usually stresses me out. So there's something to be said for noticing a beautiful sentence, and there's something to be said for sort of forgetting you're reading a sentence at all because the characters and the action take over. So, and I think that's more what Mickey Spillane is you're just in the book, you're in the world, you're not thinking about
like, oh, what happens next?
Yeah, exactly.
There is a lot of craft behind a beach read. I recently decided I was going to write a beach read. Oh my goodness.
So glad that we have a circle of authors that have been helping Winona write her beach read, because she was like, wow, you know, you read it and you're like, oh, this is great, and light and fluffy, and I've been laughing and having my frozen mimosa and life is great. And you're like, oh wait, this is hard. How did you do this? Like, yeah, it's harder than it looks. Let me show you.
Especially when you're like, I love this sentence right here, and they're like, well,
but it doesn't. So, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have, I think we've established merit for both sides.
Yeah, both sides, absolutely.
And neutral.
Let's talk about where people can find out more about you and the authors you represent.
And the literary agency that you work for. I had questions about that, too, because you said 15 people. That is tiny. You must have so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, so the agency website is distel.com, which is dystel.com. And so there you can explore, you know, there's a little bit about the agency. There's tons of information about how to query, you know, like just the format that we like to see, some FAQs. And then there's a page with profiles of each agent. So you can read a little bit about them. And that has a link to email me, has a link to my Twitter. And then there's also a page, there's a page that has bios of all our clients and some spotlights on some of our books. That doesn't break out the clients by agent, it's sort of for the whole agency. But then if you look at my Twitter, you'll probably get a good feel for who some of my clients are, because I'll be retweeting them and talking about them there. So.
We never asked this before, Jay, do you mind? Okay, so and we know 2020 has been kind of difficult with getting people out there. So do you have any people any of your clients that you would like to recommend as a 2020 beach read?
Right now, because
you know, we're having trouble getting everyone out there. There's no book tours happening.
There's no book tours. It's just like well, where can I find a good book? On the internet. So anybody that you have that you want to shout out right now.
So I have two that come to mind. Can I do two?
Yeah.
So for a beach read, my client Megan Collins has her second thriller coming out at the beginning of August. It's called Behind the Red Door. And it's a story of a woman who's going home to help her dad pick up her house, and she comes across his memoir from a girl who was kidnapped as a child. And this woman has now has gone missing again as an adult. And she's reading her memoir and realizes that she thinks this woman, when she was a girl, is in some of her memories, and thinks she may have been a witness to something about her first kidnapping, and then she might have the secret to what happened to her now. So a really smart, fun, page-turning thriller. And then the other one that comes to mind is not strictly a beach read because it comes out in December, but I think it'll be a year-round beach read. It's called How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. It's her first book, and it's about a college professor who's on the verge of making tenure, and her friends are like, you need to relax, you need to have some fun. Here's a list of things you got to do. You got to go flirt with this bartender and make out with a stranger. She has a one-night stand and then realizes that she doesn't want it to be a one-night stand. She really likes this guy, except plot twist, he works for the company that's supposed to be auditing her college and giving them advice on like restructuring and layoffs. And she's a very career-driven person, and she's working so hard on, her tenure. She's been so focused on that. So now she has to navigate, this guy I really connect with, he's great, but this is a conflict to be dating the company, and I've been focused on this for so long. And it's really fun and sexy and flirty, but it's also exploring it's doing a really smart job of exploring some really serious and, relatable issues of career versus love. She's dealing with some trauma from an ex-boyfriend that didn't treat her well. So definitely it's sort of in the Jasmine Guillory. I don't know if you've read Jasmine Guillory, or The Hating Game. I can't remember the author's name, but it's that kind of, fun, rompy rom-com that's also still doing something a little bit important at the same time. So those are my two that are kind of the most beach vacation-y reads that are coming out in the next few months. So August and December.
That is amazing. And thank you. So now I've added that to my list, and hopefully everyone watching this has added it to their list, or going to tell someone that's going to add it to their list. So let's do that. And we like to thank our guests for coming on today.
You've been amazing.
Yes.
And this was so much fun.
A little jealous.
This is the first time I've put on makeup in like 3 months. So I'm glad it still worked.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Would you like to wrap up?
Absolutely. You can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com. While you're there, take a moment. Go to the ladies tab, go to the middle, and see the charities that we proudly support. Yes, we know that times are hard, so you might not be able to donate money. That's fine. If you were doing that cleaning, because we've been all inside for a very long time, you're doing that cleaning, you have a little box of things you want to donate to charity. You might want to keep them in mind. And if you don't even have that, and that's okay too. If you just go to their webpage and read about what they're doing, and you want to send a kind note that says, hey, we see what you're doing. Thank you so much for doing this in the world. We all could use a little encouragement, and I know they would appreciate it, and we would appreciate it also. So thank you so much in advance. And remember, wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona
and Jade. Bye-bye.